So good day, friends. This is Dr. Bob Hamilton, and you have tuned in today to the Hamilton Review, where kids and culture collide. I appreciate every one of you who are on the show. It means a lot to me. I know that you guys are scurrying around with your kids, your grandkids. You're trying to live life, and the fact that you tune into this podcast means a lot to me. So thank you. I appreciate that. If you like what you hear, and I hope you do, because I do my best to bring super duper people on the show, I'd like, if you would, be kind enough to send it to your friends, your family, everybody you can think of, because the reason is not so much to hear Dr. Bob, but is to hear the people I bring on the show. And it's really an honor today to bring on a very special person. This guy is very accomplished. He's done a lot of things. He's a writer. He's written now 17 books. He's friends with people that you would be jealous that he knows. He can tell you who they are later on. But he wrote a beautiful book that we're going to talk about in some detail a little bit later on in the show. It's called Let Them Play. It's about, the subtitle is The Power and Joy of Mindful Sports Parenting. And the word mindful is something that he alludes to a lot in this book. So without further ado, Dr. Jerry Lynch, welcome to the Hamilton Review.
So great to be invited and honored, Dr. Bob. We were on pre-show, and the laughter was so great that I had to just modulate that a little bit so that I can remember what I need to talk about.
Okay. Sorry, I don't mean to laugh into the microphone too loud, but anyway.
It's great. I love it.
Okay. Well, listen, Jerry, I start out every show with having my guests talk about themselves, because I think that personal stories are fascinating. They're interesting. And your story is really interesting. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to you, stop talking, and let you tell a little bit about who you are.
It's, when someone asks me to do that, it's always difficult for me. And I say that with the greatest humility, because I'm focusing in on the people who are listening here right now. And to turn it around to me becomes rather distracting. But I understand that there's a purpose to this all. And first of all, I want people to know the most important thing is that I have 4 children. They were all athletes, and they're still growing up, and they're in their 30s. And my wife, Jan, and I, we look at this as being perhaps one of my greatest successes. It's not the 17 books and the championships won and the people that I've met. It's all those things are just a reflection of the way we were as parents. And I'll go into that in a few minutes. But so I had no idea what would get me to where I am today. I had no idea. There's no, I look back and I connect the dots, and I can understand, excuse me, I can understand that, yes, that job waiting tables at that Italian restaurant really was crucial to me being here with Dr. Bob today. And that's true. I'm not exaggerating it. Every single step of the way, everything that people would say, wow, do you regret that? I say, no, I don't regret that at all. Without that, I wouldn't be who I am today. So everything in my life has been an amazing journey, an amazing up and down. It's what Joseph Campbell, the great Joseph Campbell, would call the hero's journey. It's an up and down journey where you're making mistakes, you're failing, you're correcting them, you're learning from them, you're going forward, you get knocked down, you get up again. And that's been my life. And I've been told by so many people that I'll never make a living at what I'm doing. This is back in the day. They said, you will first of all, you'll probably, it's too difficult to get a book published. This is back before self-publishing, and I don't self-publish. And so I was saying to them, well, I love to write. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. You'll never make a living doing it. Well, I got news for you. I've made a nice living doing it. And when you write a book and it gets in the hands of people who love it, they call you and they want you to work with them, and things just stop, ballooning. But anyway, I was told I'd never be able to be a good runner. I wasn't fast enough. I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't this, I wasn't that. And I became a national champion, and I've won races on the national level.
Wow.
And yeah, and the thing is, it all comes back to, my environment where I grew up. I grew up in an environment which told me I couldn't. And I had one of two ways to go. I could collapse and say, "You're right, I can't do it," or believe them and not do anything. Or I could just say, "You know what? I don't believe you. And why not?" And I took the latter road. Why not? And that's why when I write a book like Let Them Play, I'm basically saying to all your listeners, myself included, I constantly have to reinforce this, Bob. I'm constantly trying to tell myself, you know what? There are no limits unless you try.
Hmm.
And the only failure is not getting up again. And so that's been my life philosophy.
Yeah.
And so here I am, and I'm happy to be here with you.
No, listen, I'm totally humbled. I forgot to actually read a little bio about you before I introduce you. So I'm going to do that now. Okay.
Well, we talked about the most important thing about me already, and that is I have 4 children. I
Well,
mean,
that's part of your bio. I'm going to read it right now.
yeah,
Okay.
and that talks about my courage, and that talks about my failings and my successes, and in today's day and world, that's no easy task. My
Uh,
most difficult work.
Amen to that. Listen, I have 6 kids, and that my wife and I consider that to be the crown jewels of our life. But let me tell people who you are. Dr. Jerry Lynch is a sports psychologist. He's the author of 17 books, the founder and the director of The Way of Champions. He mentioned that, a consulting group geared toward mastering the inner game for peak sports performance. He's the parent of 4 athletic kids. He has over 35 years of experience as a sports psychologist, coach, athlete, and teacher, drawing on his experience working with Olympic, NBA, and NCAA champions. He's transformed the lives of parents, coaches, and youth athletes. I should have said that before I let you take off there, Jerry. But you've been in the game for a long time, and I love the fact that you working in that Italian restaurant was going to help you be on my show today. I was kind of hoping that was true. So that I'm humbled by you saying that. But so you grew up in a culture that said you couldn't. Now, why were they saying you couldn't? Who were saying you couldn't?
Everybody. I mean, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and Brooklyn, New York, when you were a little boy back in the early 60s, late 50s, people didn't believe in themselves. It was like a rough place to be at the time. Now it's kind of regentrified and it's different. You can't even afford a home in Brooklyn, New York. They're more expensive than LA, and so I know that my environment always looked at the negative. They always argued for their limitations. Like they always prepared for the phrase I remember most, Bob, is prepare for the worst.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so that what's going to happen? So you won't be disappointed. You're still going to be disappointed. And if you prepare for the worst, what I learned is the worst usually happens. So what I did was I just decided that everything my environment was telling me, I just did the opposite, and it worked. And sure enough, the mind does determine, your feelings do determine how you function. Feelings equal function. If you're feeling optimistic and you're feeling courageous and you're feeling valued and important, and if you're feeling confident, Dr. Bob, you're going to have one hell of a day.
Yeah.
It's going to be really, but if you're going out there and you're feeling pessimistic and downtrodden and unimportant and disrespected and irrelevant, you'd have to agree with me, it's not going to be a very good day for you. So I understood this early on. And what I did was I just tried to find ways that I could validate what I intuitively knew was correct. And now, 40, 50 years later, science is now proving what I, as a boy, and don't ask me how I got that, because I don't know. But what I basically did was rebelled. I rebelled against the negativity. when someone said I couldn't do it, I said, oh yeah, you just wait and see. I'll show you I can do it. And the thing is, I teach that to people, and people come back to me 15, 20 years later. I have athletes telling me 20, 25 years later, that item that you taught us when we were working together with our team, that we can do anything if we did this, this, and this. I said, yeah, but you got to do the work. She said, I did the work, and this is what happened. And so
Yeah.
science is backing it up now, and it's just something I live my life by.
So true. Your comments remind me, there's a poem, I think by Edgar Guest, which is entitled "They Said It Couldn't Be Done." Do you know that poem?
I do.
Okay,
Yeah.
that
Books
is
I read. Yeah, as a kid.
yeah, and I love that poem. And I wish I could recite it now. I can't, but look it up, friends. You'll be encouraged by this little poem. I think it said the little guy said everyone said it can't be done, but then he smiled and said, let me see, and he tried, and by golly, he got it done. So it's an encouraging poem. So let me ask you, kind of back up a little bit. You grew up in Brooklyn. You told me before that your dad was a fire chief. You were one of how many kids?
I'm one of three. We were the smallest family in the neighborhood. We had families there, 16 kids. We had another family of 12 kids. Um, it was Irish Catholic uh,
Yeah,
ghetto, so to
yeah.
speak. And a lot of Irish Catholic people had a lot of kids back then, and we only had three. Looking back on that, I wish we had more at the time, but I'm glad we didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, three's actually a big number in today's world. I don't know if you know that or not, but the size of
Yeah,
families,
and you have six.
we have six. So we loved having three so much, we decided to have another three. So that's how we did it. So
Divide them up equally.
we did. We ultimately had a boy, girl, girl, and then we had another boy, girl, girl. So your siblings, did they likewise rebel against the status quo?
No, not at all.
Okay.
They didn't rebel at all. They went along with the program.
So you're an outlier in your
I am.
family? Yeah.
I really identify with that. I'm different, and the reason why is there are a number of reasons, but being an outlier to me is a positive thing, because what am I outlying? I'm trying to find ways to be different, to help people be who they want to be, and that takes some courage, and that takes some time to embrace. Believe me.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that going with the current is always the easy way. Um, Going against the current is always, it feels kind of lonely sometimes. I'm sure you talk about this with your athletes.
Mm-hmm. I know what you're saying, and you do it long enough, you get to feel like it's okay, and then you can embrace who you are. You've got to. There was a time it was a place that I got to where I just felt, you know what, my purpose is pure, my intention is pure. What I mean by that, Bob, is that I am I am on this planet for one reason, and that's to serve.
Yeah.
And because I'm different, I'm finding different ways to help different people to be better versions of themselves. And it happens to resonate with so many people. So what I'm doing is I'm tapping in to a different way, which other people are craving. When I have a team and I'm working with team sports, or I'm working with, let's say, individual athletes, individual kids, parents of children, which we'll talk about pretty soon. I'm helping them to get what they crave, and I'm helping them to give what the kids crave. And what do they all crave? Connection and caring and love, and to be empowered, and to feel important and valued and respected. And this is what I'm teaching,
Yeah.
actually. And it's not some deep psychological principle. It's the elements of what makes people good human beings and be the best version of themselves so that they can help others. But what happens is we put ourselves inside this box and we're afraid to go outside that box. And all I am is I'm a person who ran outside of that box. And what I did when I went outside the box is I discovered different ways to impact the lives of people who want to change but weren't willing to go outside the box yet. And then once I do that, then I inform them how outside the box they are. And then the reaction is, oh, I didn't realize that. I said, yeah. And that's what you wanted. And that's where you are. So it's really been a marriage between who I am as a person and what I teach and who the people are that I work with.
I think that everybody who becomes a champion, and your organization is called Way of Champions, there's no way you can stay in the box and be a champion. Is that a reasonable statement?
Oh, okay. So all the people that your listeners are respecting in terms of big names like a Phil Jackson or a Steve Kerr or any famous athletes that I've worked with, you know, they're all outside the box thinkers. And by definition, a champion, let me make this clear. A champion is not the person that you become, it's the person that you are in the moment. In other words, are you willing to do A, B, and C to be X, Y, and Z?
Yeah.
And so it's a set of behaviors that I have learned, researched, learned, and now teach that enable all these people to be champions in the moment. And to be a champion, you have to act like one. And there are certain behaviors in this book, Let Them Play, of course, teaches parents how to be champion parents. We're not going to put a medal around your neck, but you're going to feel in your heart deeply that you're successful, not because your children are winning championships or your children are getting the next train to Stanford on a scholarship. You're a champion parent because you could see the smile and the joy and the fun that your children are having in real time. And that's really what success is all about. And from that backdrop, from that success, all the other successes are a mere reflection, like becoming that great athlete or becoming a president of this company or whatever it is. It's a mere reflection. So for me, I shouldn't really be here. I mean, my successes, quote, on paper, are not the reflection of someone like me growing up, but they are a reflection of someone like me who was acting like a champion before I was crowned a champion.
Yeah, I love that.
When I get crowned the champion, I'm not surprised. I mean, because I'm doing all the champion-like behavior. And, parents can be that way. And that's what I want parents to be. And you want to be that way,
So I'm going to jump in here because you're referring to your book. I'm going to get to your book more deeply in a second. But you're talking about champions. And I'm going to give you you put a list together in your book. And let me just read what she wrote. And I'm quoting Dr. Jerry Lynch here. A champion is anyone who, number one, is a fierce competitor fighting the inner battles of fear, frustration, fatigue, and self-doubt. Number two, who demonstrates courage, determination, persistence, and perseverance. Number three, a champion strives for positive results, yet enjoys the process. I love that. Number four, he or she takes risks to improve, knowing that if failure happens, it is an opportunity to learn and improve on the road of self-discovery. Number five, a champion focuses on consistent practice and preparation, putting in the work so that the possibility of favorable outcomes and results increases. I'm not going to read the whole list, but let me tell you, this is it's worth getting this book. By the way, let me tell you the book again. It's called Let Them Play, The Power and Joy of Mindful Sports Parenting. It is published by New World Library, and you can find it online. I did. It's worth buying this book for this list, which is on page 36, by the way, if you're counting. Jerry, I love this list, and it goes on, and there's so many wonderful things you're saying here. I would like you. I want to kind of push you back to your childhood for one more second, because you start out this book, and by the way, it's eminently readable, friends. It's a great book to read. I want you to go back to your childhood, because you kind of riffed on how you grew up and how life was as a kid and playing in the neighborhood. Could you tell that story?
Well, my neighborhood was doused with children, and I mentioned that earlier on with you, Dr. Bob. We had, I think it was something like 73 kids on one street.
Wow.
That's
That's a
right.
lot.
I mean,
That's a lot. That's a couple of football fields. I mean, football
that's
teams.
exactly
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So 73 kids. Every summer in the morning, we would be out playing, 8 o'clock in the morning. No parents were around, none. And there was a schoolyard right down at the end of the street, a public school, elementary school. And this big schoolyard had all the room for you to roam and do whatever you wanted. I would go down there personally. I'd be down there at 8 o'clock. I'd get my parents weren't even up yet. I would get some breakfast. I'd throw together some cereal, run down there and be the first one down there. And we choose up sides and we play all kinds of balls: stick ball, wall ball, fall ball. We would football, baseball. We would play everything. And maybe we go home for lunch. Maybe we wouldn't. But at the end of the day, we never saw our parents, basically.
Okay.
No, that's the truth. And I'm getting to a point here. But we had fun.
Oh yeah.
We had so much fun. And we learned so many lessons. We learned what being a champion was like by not being told what we need to do. We didn't get debriefed at the end of a softball game. When you're on third base and there's 2 out, you got to take a bigger lead, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
What we wanted to hear is like, what's for lunch, from our parents. And so we would do all these things. At the end of the day, we had, from those 73 kids in that neighborhood, we had 5 kids who went pro.
Wow.
That's per capita, probably in any place in the nation. We had more people going pro than any place. And the reason for me is our parents let us play. The title of my book, Let Them Play.
Yep.
And what we did on our own was we got put down, we got back up, we got into arguments, we solved them. We fell, we got hurt, we got up, we brushed it off, we kept going. So what we started doing was we started developing all these characteristics and traits of a champion, and we weren't overprotected. We knew what loss was. We weren't protected from loss, and that's a good idea. We knew what it was like to belong to something bigger than just our own family.
Sure.
We knew what it was like to navigate the uncharted waters of life that was coming our way. And we had these guys go pro. I didn't go pro, but I wound up becoming eventually a national champion in my sport, which was distance running. Other people became amazing human beings and contributors to society. And that was success to me. And that was growing up in my neighborhood. But there was a lot of battles and a lot of challenges to overcome, as I mentioned earlier. And
sure.
And
you're reminding me of my life as a young kid in Northern California, because we had a slew of kids. We grew up in a neighborhood that was recently like a suburb, I guess, of this small town. And there were kids in every house. I mean, every house. And so I would do the same thing. I would knock on doors and say, "Hey, let's go play football." I would kind of round people up. We also, when we chose teams, interesting thing, we actually chose teams that were pretty fair. We knew who the players were, and we would alternate. We would kind of go, "Oh, you choose one, I choose one, you choose one." So was it? I mean, if you went out there and you got routed every time you had a game, you kind of go, that would be not fun. So people figured out who the super duper players were, and they had to go against each other, right? And so then you also got down to the end of the line. Some people were always chosen last. Sorry about that, people. That was probably tough on their ego, but they kept on showing up. What can I say? They kept on showing up to play. And we had terrible fights. I mean, we would we ended up, there was usually a wrestling match between a couple of the kids, pretty much every game. And we would always scream about that's not fair, this is fair, and we would make up our own rules. Sometimes you never had enough kids to play, so we had to close right field. You remember that, or all those things. But we figured out all the nuances to make it fun. And I will tell you, Jerry, those were really fun moments. And you went to bed. You were beat when you got to bed. You weren't fighting with your parents. You went to bed, right?
Great. Yeah, yeah. Well, you're bringing back a lot of memories for me, and there's a point that we're both making here, which is really important for your listeners, and that is kids are going to do well without you. I mean, even going back to that kid who was picked last, like I'm not going to apologize for that. That's a message that that kid needs to get, and maybe the message is, God, maybe if I work harder, maybe I can move up the scale here. Maybe I get tired of being picked last. Maybe the message is, maybe sports isn't for me, which is a great decision. Go out and play music, and maybe you become the next Van Cliburn, you know, or I still want to be an athlete. I'm going to work harder. I'm going to take the ball and hit it against the wall and throw it up and have catch with my dad or something. And so it's a lesson to be learned. And,
Yeah,
and the big thing that you're communicating to me and to others is we didn't need help. Kids don't need what we think they need. They
that's
need
right.
food, they need shelter, they need to know that you care. In fact, the 5 best words that I could say to any one of my kids, just 5 words, is I love watching you compete.
Mm, love that.
That's all you have to say.
Yeah.
You don't have to debrief the game. You don't have to tell them what they need to do in the last quarter of the basketball game and when the game's on the line. And if you're on the foul line, this is what you got to. You don't have to do any of that. I just love watching you compete. Or the other best 5 words is, who wants to have lunch? And it's like, that's it.
I want to quote another one of your quotes from this book, okay? And this is exactly what you're talking about. You're talking about today's in the world today. It says today we are experiencing a deluge of parental intervention, almost to the point where one wonders whether kids are playing for themselves or for the entertainment of their parents, who often live vicariously through their kids' achievements. The word deluge is such a great word. And I think that that's true. When you go to games and you see parents, kind of acting out sometimes. Some of these parents are not exactly what I would call subtle about winning, and it's embarrassing. That deluge of parenting, I think, people are interested. They want to go to the games and watch their kids play. That's nice. I don't remember my parents necessarily coming to every game that I played when I was playing Little League. In fact, I know they didn't. I would ride my bike to the field and play, and I would tell my parents, what happened, but at dinner time, but they weren't like there cheering me on. Occasionally they would come, and it was always nice to have them there, of course, but it wasn't like they were driving me there. That's for sure. So this deluge of parents, can you speak to that phenomenon?
Well, yeah, first of all, if I'm going to be accurate here, all the people that are listening to this podcast, they're all good parents. Otherwise, they wouldn't be listening to you.
True.
People that are on this call, they're listening because they're hoping to find better ways to connect with their kids, to help their kids be better in all ways. So I want to applaud that. Some of the parents that really should be here are not going to be here because they think they know it all. So, but back to your audience, the thing about your audience is I'm part of you. I am you. I'm searching always, even at my age, I am searching for ways to be a better parent, a better person, a better speaker, a better writer. And why? Because I'm only halfway there. I've got a lot to learn. And so being on this podcast and listening, I know that you're this kind of parent. However, what I do with this book is it's for parents like you who say, there are better ways. I'm struggling with this. This is a challenge. I need to be helpful. I already threw out one of my favorite lines, and that is, don't debrief any game. Just give them the 5 words. I love watching you compete. There are more that we'll get into, I'm sure. But the thing is, I want parents out there to know that failure is positive. It's our greatest teacher. Raise your hand out there right now if failure didn't help you become who you are today.
Yeah.
Well, of course it did. And the other thing, too, is that it's not only failure, but it's struggle. So many parents out there, and because they're trying to do the right thing, Bob, it's not like they're making big mistakes here. They think that protecting their kids from the struggle is a good thing. My experience tells me, working from the professional level down to the middle school and elementary school level, it's telling me that struggle is a gift. If your children learn about the struggle and you're there to help them when they are struggling, not to get out of the struggle, but to ask them the questions: what do you think can happen here? What do you think you can do? How do you feel you can work with this so it can be better and easier for you? To give them some critical thinking skills, give them a skill set to work out of trouble, so that when they become adults, 20, 25, 30, and beyond, they'll be armored. They'll be armed with amazing skills that will allow them to navigate the uncharted waters that we all have to face. So this is really important. It's important for you to know that as a sports parent, my first child, and I'm reminded by this all the time by them, I made 5,000 mistakes with him.
Hmm. Yeah.
By the time I got to my fourth, it was down to 50. But still 50 mistakes, if you think of it over a season of soccer, is a lot of mistakes. and so if I had this book when I was a parent, it wouldn't have changed everything. It would have changed some things, but it would help me to have read something like this. And that's why I wrote it. It would have helped me to understand that I was making a fool of myself when I was running with one of my children who was trying to cross the finish line early, and I would help him running by being by his side. I mean, that was totally crazy to do. But I mean, and the mistakes go on and on and on. But parenting. Can I read a quote from here?
Oh, please. Yes.
This is in the introduction. In fact, it's the first paragraph of the beginning of the book. See if you can relate. Parenting athletic children is difficult. It's expensive. Actually, I'm understating the case. It often can be enigmatic, mysterious, nebulous, confusing, complex, formidable, inconvenient, demanding, burdensome, unmanageable, and at times a crazy nightmare. Having said all that, I consider this a sacred journey, as crazy as this sounds, which has the potential to be the most rewarding, mystical, spiritual experience of your entire life. Now, I go on to explain what I mean by that, and it's basically this. My kids were my Zen masters in residence. They taught me more than I wanted to even know, but those lessons have helped me to become the person I am.
Yeah.
Those lessons have helped me to be more effective in my professional work. They've helped me become more effective in my relationship with my partner and wife, Jan. They've helped me to become a better overall person. And I didn't grow up till I had kids. And so this journey of sports, what it does is it accelerates the process of you and I becoming better at who we are.
Yeah.
And so with all of that, oh my God, you know how much it costs to have a kid play soccer at the age of 8? People are paying thousands of dollars to have them play on comp teams, competitive teams, club teams.
Sure.
And oh my God, do you have a weekend in the fall? No, there are no weekends. So forget the weekends. They're all out. They're competing. They're filled with competition. Yes, they're fun, but they're frustrating. They're nebulous. They're hard. They're challenging. So
they're long. There's a lot of driving that you have to do too.
A lot of driving. All of a sudden, you're
yeah.
a chauffeur. You're a professional
Yeah.
chauffeur. And so knowing all this, accepting this, we're all speaking the same language. Let's help each other. I want to give you what you crave, And I want to get what you crave as well. And that's why I wrote this book.
So you said something just now. You said that I never grew up until I had kids. I think that that's so true. I mean, obviously, and I do believe that this idea of acceleration by being involved in sports does accelerate to a degree that process, because you're engaging the kids in something and you're watching them, and it puts you into your feelings. You get involved. You remember things, and you're kind of biting at you're dying to give them advice. But you really your whole vibe of your book is don't go there. And this whole idea of you mentioned the parents' agenda on page 30 in your book. You talk about the parents' agenda, how, we have to get away from our agenda and let the kids play and enjoy themselves. I love that. And I just want to throw one other thing. I met a Olympic gold medal swimmer. And his father happened to be a very, very famous swimmer as well, very good swimmer. And he gave his son, and this is why I think this kid ultimately went on to become a gold medalist. He said every time he would go to a competition, he would look at his son and said, "Son, have fun." That's all he said. He said, he sat there and he said, "Have fun, just enjoy it." And I go, wow, I'm actually now doing that with my own grandchildren. I said, listen, just go have fun. And believe me, listen, I wish Dr. Lynch, Dr. Jerry, that I would have had your book, because Lord knows, so many times I didn't want them to have fun. I wanted them to succeed and win. And so fun was like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, maybe have fun, but I want you to win.
Yeah. And by the way, you know who else needs to have fun? The parents.
Yeah.
There's a lot of parents sitting in the stands watching a game that are not having fun. They are really they're so nervous and so tight and so tense and tentative. They're not enjoying what? They're not enjoying the joy that their kids could be having, because their kids are not having joy.
Yeah.
Because they're feeling the pressure and tension from overzealous parents who want their kids to catch the next train to Stanford, or coaches who are measuring their self-worth as a professional by the outcomes of the game, when indeed outcomes at a young age are irrelevant. I mean, just ask Steph Curry. All right. Do I need to give you another name? I mean, let's go to the top. Steph Curry understands that for his kids, the outcomes are not what's important. They're irrelevant. And championships wear off. I've been with 118 championship teams all the way up to the professional level, world championship teams, state championship teams, and national championship teams. It wears off in 3 weeks. But what doesn't wear off, Dr. Bob, what doesn't wear off is that connection that kids have with the game, with each other, with their parents, the fun and joy. The number one value of the Golden State Warriors, number one, joy. And Steve came up with that because he knows that when we're having fun and joy, anything's possible. Yep. But if you're focusing on we have to win now, and how do we get to a championship? The most important game that your team that a coach could ever win is the relationship game.
Yes.
And the most important game for the parents, of course, is the relationship game. I feel sorry for a lot of parents who are so unaware of what we're talking about. They're destroying their relationship with their kids. The kids aren't having fun. And as a result, I hit you with this astounding statistic. There are 33 million kids between the ages of 6 and 17 right now in sports.
Wow.
33 million.
It's a big number.
By the age of 15, 78% will quit.
Yeah.
By the age of 15. For those of you, I did the math, it's 25 plus million. 25.5 million kids are going to be quitting. Now, here's the catch. What about those that remain? Oh, boy, poor them. It gets worse. No, it does. It gets worse. The stakes get higher. It winds up people getting injured.
Yep.
When they get injured, They get medications for the injury. They start getting addicted to the medications, or they start drinking alcohol because they're older. They start getting less sleep because of the medications. It's a tremendous downward spiral. And before you know it, not only do they quit, but some of them choose methods that are very difficult to talk about. I've
Yeah.
had athletes who have gone the route of taking their own lives.
Mm.
So it is
Wow.
really a bad situation. And it all comes from pressure. Here's the big five: pressure. What's the okay, so if it's not pressure, it's anxiety, depression, stress. So there's four. And that's what they feel. And as we know, science is backing us up. How we feel is how we're going to function. So if the kids are feeling those four things, they're not going to
Yeah.
function very, very well.
They're
So
on a downhill. They're on a downhill slide.
and your parents who are listening are not in that category, because what we're doing here on this podcast is we're searching for these ways, and you're presenting them with the opportunity to look at something from a reformed sports parent who made changes, who now professionally knows the science behind it. I can say your life can be more fun. And as a result of you having more fun, your kids are going to have more fun. They're going to get more out of it. They'll be champions immediately, and they'll get the best out of themselves.
So friends, let me just kind of talk to you, for everyone out there listening. So this is phenomenal advice. And those of you who have maybe children who are younger, too young to be out there on the field yet, they're coming, and they're going to want to do that because it's fun. It's fun to be out in the soccer field. It's fun to play baseball and basketball, all these things. This is great advice in terms of just thinking about how you're going to approach this whole thing. Jerry, another thing, I'm thank you for listening to this show. This is important, very important conversation. One other thing you kind of highlight, and I was one of these things I kind of had to think about, but you have a whole chapter which you call the success of failure. You alluded to that briefly, even your own personal failures that you kind of went through in your parenting. But I'd like you to elucidate a little bit about this idea, because failure is regarded by most people as failure. And you're talking about the success of failure. That's a little counterintuitive.
It is. And most of the things I write about are counterintuitive, which is really important for the listeners to know. When I say your opponent is your partner, whoa, some people give a lot of pushback to that. But then when I explain that without that partner, you'd never be the great athlete you'd be. If a Steph Curry didn't play against a Damian Lillard, he wouldn't be as good as he is.
Sure.
If you don't have that opportunity to play against another person, you're not going to improve. So your opponent is a partner, and you compete together for something bigger than each one of you.
Sure. Iron sharpens iron, my friend.
Iron sharpens iron. Beautiful. And now we're talking about failure. Failure is a teacher. It's counterintuitive, just like your opponent is a partner. Loss is winning. In fact, there was an article, not an article, actually, it was a book written 2,500 years ago. The name of it is The Tao Te Ching. It was the first book of leadership I ever read. The Tao Te Ching is an ancient Chinese book of wisdom. And in that book, I think it's chapter 53, 54. I'm forgetting. Sometimes I pride myself on knowing exactly where things come from. But let's just say it comes from one of those two chapters. And in that chapter, there was a simple statement that said, we lose, yet in this way, we win.
Yeah.
Now, everyone out there listening, think about all of your losses, setbacks, errors, mistakes that you've made, or how about rejections in life? If you really examine them with an open heart, you're going to come to the realization that you're a winner. You won because of that. Every crisis that you've had has been an opportunity. Every failure has been an opportunity. Crisis is opportunity. In Chinese, it means opportunity blowing on a dangerous wind. So we have all of these opportunities ahead of us, but what we're doing is we're judging them as being bad and not good for us. So when I wrote this chapter, to your point, the success of failure, it is counterintuitive. And I'm asking you to think outside the box. I'm thinking if you read this book, you're going to find different ways of looking at things, and you're going to have what I call the aha experience. Oh, so in other words, when my kids fail, it's actually an opportunity. Yes, it is. For what? It's an opportunity to take time out and ask them, why are they a better athlete because they lost that game? I do this with all the teams I've worked with over the years. All those 118 championship teams, NC2A, national champion basketball, lacrosse, field hockey, whatever they were. Monday morning in the locker room, I would be there saying to those teams, yeah, we lost on Saturday. That was brutal. That didn't feel good. However, let's go outside the box. Why are we a better team because of that loss? And once we identified everything we had learned from that setback, we were a better team.
Yeah.
The next time we would play that same team, we would crush them. We would crush them for the national championship. That happened to me 10, 12 times.
Wow.
And so I've learned through my experience as well, personally. I have a book, my third book, Thinking Body, Dancing Mind. I was refused publication for that book 15 times. Now, someone says, so what? 15 times, you got it published. You know how I felt after the second or third time I was refused publication? To say nothing about the fifth or eighth time. What about when I reached 10? That was time to quit. How about 15? 15 rejections. Well, I kept going. And I learned from all those rejections how to make that a better book. Wow. Every one of those rejections said, you don't have enough stories. Or you're just not clear. You're not speaking to your audience. You gotta, so I would make these corrections. And then I created a better book. I finally got it published, ironically, by one of the publishers that had rejected me already. And now, 31 years later, it's still a bestseller for me in 10 languages throughout the world.
Wow.
And I still get periodic every 6 months. The way they pay you is every 6 months you get a check for it deposited into your account. And I'm 31 years out from that, and it's like, wow. It's not the money, believe me. What it is I'm still having an influence from a book that was rejected 15 times, but my unwillingness to quit and lay down and keep going was a lesson that I'm trying to teach people here at this moment. But the other part of it is that my failure is my greatest teacher. And that's what helped me make a great book.
It's a great story. I have to say that takes courage, and it takes perseverance, and all the things that you talk about in being a champion. And on page 36 of your book is that you've lived it, and so by living it, you can articulate it, and you do that so well. I'm gonna looking at our time, and I know that you have a hard stop in a couple of minutes. I'd like you to, there's one thing that you talk about a lot in your book, and I think it's a very important point to kind of finish on, and that is the idea that you have to have a work ethic. This idea of becoming a champion requires a certain amount of good old-fashioned work, and you talk about practicing what you call game time practice is how you put it, and just as we finish off here, can you just kind of clarify that idea and the importance of a work ethic? I'm not sure how to instill that in people, but that is something that you can't do without to make it to the top.
Well, let me be perfectly honest with this. I don't know how to instill a work ethic in people either, and there's nothing that you can read will instill it inside you either. It has to come from inside. It has to come from you. I'll suggest to you that you need to examine your work ethic. And let me tell you what really creates my work ethic, because I am a good worker. I'm not the most brilliant, but I am a good worker. And that is, I really know why, capital W, capital H, capital Y. I know why I am doing my writing. I know why I continue to work at this age, even though I don't have to. And that is, it's not to make a living, it's to make a difference.
It's good.
And if you're in touch with your why, nothing's going to stop you from working. There are too many people out in the world that never ask themselves the question, why am I doing this? I've been at this job for 23 years. Why am I doing it? That's a good question. Do you have an
Yeah,
answer for it? And you might
absolutely.
find out that after 23 years, you don't love what you're doing. Maybe it's time to make a change. So if you're not motivated and if you don't have a work ethic, big part of the problem is you're not connected passionately to what you do. If you haven't heard that through my voice today, you haven't gotten anything out of this. I love what I'm doing. And what am I doing? Why am I doing it? I'm doing it to make a difference in your life. I sincerely want others to be better versions of themselves because selfishly, it makes a better world for me. But before I end this, I have to say something here. I want to read you a quote by Steve Kerr. This is how he ends the forward to the book. Maybe, he said, this is to parents, maybe by sitting back, enjoying the game, observing your child in action and just letting them play, as Jerry books suggest, maybe, just maybe, you can help your child learn from the game faster and enjoy it more. Just a thought. End quote.
I love it. Yeah, I read that. I underlined that you can help your child learn the game faster, enjoy it more. Amen to that.
Yeah.
So
And
listen,
it doesn't get any better than what Steve Kerr's doing.
no, Steve Kerr is he's a winner. He's a champion. So friends, we're going to end it here. The book is called Let Them Play. The Power and Joy of Mindful Sports Parenting is written by Dr. Jerry Lynch. Forward by Steve Kerr. You just heard part of that. It's a great book, and I recommend it highly. Dr. Lynch, how do people find you?
My website is wayofchampions@gmail.com. No, excuse me, that's my email. They could send me an email, wayofchampions@gmail.com. They could go to my website, which is wayofchampions.com. All my books are on Amazon and other places and in bookstores. And if they don't have them right there, they're going to order them for you. So there's no stopping.
Yeah, and actually, Dr. Kerr, Dr. Kerr. Sorry, you put Steve Kerr's name in my brain here. Dr. Jerry Lynch is pretty well known out there, friends. It doesn't take a whole lot of Google searching to find this guy. He's very, very accessible. So pick up his books. He's got 17 of them. I have read number one of them. I have to get more because I like what you say, Jerry. You're onto some good stuff. So thank you for I love your passion, by the way. This guy, you're showing something here just on this conversation, which is very, very powerful. So thank you for being here. And friends, thank you for being here as well. I appreciate your attention, and it's been a great conversation. Dr. Lynch, appreciate your time.
Well, I enjoy being here with you. I really do. And a big part of the reason, Dr. Bob, is you're doing such good work for so many people, and you're reaching a lot of kids in this way. And boy, that's making a difference. And so I admire your work as well.
Thank you, and may it be. Okay, friends, until next time, be safe, be well, and thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.
You have been listening to the Hamilton Review, where kids and culture collide. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your day. Tune in again next week on Apple Podcast. Rate and comment and tell a friend.